the Halo Wars 2 expansion, Awakening the Nightmare, Installation 01, an upcoming Halo fan game based on Halo 3's multiplayer, Halo 5's upcoming classic playlist, as well as backwards compatibility for all Xbox 360 based Halo games, you thought it couldn't get any better. Well, think again. Because SPV3, a mod which is designed to breathe new life into the classic game Halo Combat Evolved, has finally been released to the public. Let's take a look. SPV3 is a mod that takes advantage of Halo Combat Evolved on the PC to bring new missions, weapons, enemies and much more to the game in order to create a fresh, new experience for the fans of the series. Halo Combat Evolved for many people is the best campaign out of all the Halo games, with exploration and mystery being at the forefront, something that the rest of the Halo games, at least for the most part, failed to capture. It continues to be one of the most influential shooters of all time, with gameplay that even holds up to this very day. So, how do you improve perfection? Well, the SPV3 team has taken the Halo CE formula and added tons of new content to spice up your gaming experience. Some of the changes include completely new missions like Silent Cartographer Evolved, new maps for you to explore, new objectives, new enemies such as the Menacing Brute, an enemy seen in the following Halo games that was missing for Combat Evolved, new weapons like the Battle Rifle, the DMR, and the Hunter Cannon, and a breathtaking new soundtrack that is so awe-inspiring, feeling both recognizable but also fresh at the same time. Take a listen. They've also introduced a new user interface that takes inspiration from Halo 5's UI, but combines it with the beauty and majesty of Halo Combat Evolved's menu. Graphics and textures have been completely overhauled, and the story has been improved by adding in audio from Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary's terminals, such as the iconic Keys terminal, where we can hear him being absorbed and taken over by the Flood.
This will never work, you Covenant bastards! I'll never lead you to Earth!
Taking a look at the mod shows that it's clearly designed by people who love the game and want to see it flourish even 16 years after its initial release. They've taken the original formula and added something new to the sandbox, but yet, at its core, it still manages to feel like Halo. It's a true love letter to the fans, and it shows. I highly recommend giving this mod a download. The link will be in the description, as well as Master's channel, who is the mastermind behind SPV3. Give this video a thumbs up if you're excited to try out SPV3, and remember to subscribe to us at Halo Follower if you want more community videos like this. I've been your host Alistair. You can follow me and Jacob on our personal channel Dangerville, where we cover Shadow of War, Jurassic Park, Godzilla and more. And that's about it for this video. We'll see you in the next one. Peace out.
When I joined the Corps, we didn't have any
Halo Combat Evolved was a game that defied all expectations. Not only was it a damn good 2001 shooter, it was the shooter that set a bar for console games to follow. Even now in 2017, Halo CE's influence is still being felt, and how it pretty much set the template for how to design a console shooter. Halo CE kicked off one of the most successful gaming franchises of all time, and recently was inducted into the Video Game Hall of Fame, cementing its legacy for years to come. Now, despite the series' success, there is a split. Engagement design is like an intense 30-second game of rock, paper, scissors. Each enemy encounter rarely lasted over a minute, but that minute or so was very intense, with you juggling back and forth between weapons and toys lying around till all the enemies were eliminated. The game's core gameplay was ridiculously simplistic, but thanks to the way that the sandbox around the simple gameplay was designed, you probably wouldn't notice how simple the gameplay actually was. In the past 5 years, Halo has opted to focus more on upgrading the core gameplay, which in my opinion hurts the very nature of Halo's simple gameplay made complex through the toys around you identity. See, people mistakenly say Halo needs to innovate, without realizing that the Halo series innovates with new additions made to its sandbox, and keeps the gameplay simple so that the sandbox is completely unrestricted and made incredibly flexible. No game understands this about the Halo series more than SPV3. At its core, SPV3 plays exactly like the classic Halo CE, but due to its numerous overhauls to the sandbox, it plays like a completely new Halo experience. I can't say that this mod adds anything to the original game, because new elements aren't simply tacked on to an existing experience. The entire game has been reworked to welcome and incorporate these new elements seamlessly. Examples of these new elements not seen in the original Halo games are the battle rifle, SMG, sentinel beam, DMR, brute plasma rifle, hunter cannons, focus rifle, etc., as well as variants and modded versions of said weapons, such as silenced firearms that allow for more stealth-focused gameplay, or underbarrel grenade launchers that act as a sort of instantly detonating grenade, allowing for very aggressive play. The game also sees new enemies such as brutes, skirmishers, wildlife on the Halo ring that you can aggravate into attacking nearby Covenant, and in the later stages of the game, Covenant that have become so desperate to fight off the Flood that they've resorted to using human weaponry, as well as multiple different classes of hunters. New equipment allows for more variety in the grenades that you get to play with, my personal favorite being the Vortex grenade. Masters and his team tastefully rebalanced aspects of this game to incorporate these new sandbox additions. The pistol is no longer the be-all, end-all. The assault rifle is more fitting for medium-range engagements to make room for the SMG, which dominates at close range. The plasma pistol is less reliable than it was in order to force the player to experiment with new weapons and strategies. And energy recharging stations actually allow for the player to refill Covenant weapon batteries so that you can continue using weapons you may find an attachment to. Now, all these new elements may be fine, but at the end of the day, simply creating a new sandbox isn't quite enough if you're playing on the same old geometry with the same old encounters, just with a Reach-inspired aesthetic painted over it. This is why Masters and his team created new environments and additions to the levels, specifically tailored to the new sandbox's strengths. An example of an excellently designed sequence is in the second mission, where I found myself exiting the cave, but in the middle of a valley littered with energy cages that house captured Marine prisoners by brute enforcers. The valley is completely open and allows for multiple ways to engage each brute encampment. Have a ranged weapon? Sit back and pick them off. Have a close ranged weapon? Plenty of cover to allow you to move up. As I freed the Marines, I got orders to proceed to a fortress that the UNSC survivors have been establishing as a temporary base of operations until we could get off the ring. I engaged in a mini siege that reminded me of the Battle of Helm's Deep from Lord of the Rings as Wraith mortars bombarded the walls. The second mission made me feel like a survivor, and the new addition of terminals and journal entries that you can find scattered around the levels really helps show you what's going on from each faction's perspective, both the UNSC and the Covenant, and later on the Flood. Like we were truly stranded on this alien world with all these different characters and beings all fighting for survival. The original version of this level is one of my favorites in the series, but I always felt it did a poor job of balancing quick, in-your-face action with long-range vehicle combat. And thanks to the way SPV3 redesigned the level, it's fixed my issues, and this is a level that I find myself frequently replaying in the mod. Another thing I felt we had to discuss is the music of the game. While remaining faithful to the original game's score and ideas, the composer Yafet Meza does beautiful things with it. Grand is the word I would use to describe the SPV3 soundtrack. Grand is the word I would use to describe the SPV3 soundtrack. Very rarely do you see fan projects take on a almost AAA quality score like this. The OST felt as much a love letter to the original game as it did a unique and different take. Marty's original track felt like it was very content with simply remaining on the Halo ring and establishing the world around it. Yafet's score is aiming for the very stars themselves. Beautiful beats and vocalization propel me forward and give the ring a bigger sense of scale than ever before. If I may make one critique, some tracks did feel a bit like they're being performed in a cave because of the heavy use of reverb, and in some instances, such as the first level, I found that the music was a bit too grand in scale and actually began to progressively overwhelm and overshadow the level itself. This, though, is just a minor nitpick, because as a whole, this track feels so quality. It feels so loved and nurtured, incredibly well produced, and clearly from a place of love. I don't think people will disagree when I say that the first half of Halo CE is easily its strongest aspect, with the second half starting off cool with the introduction of the Flood, and slowly falling apart into a tedious chore. How well does SPV3 handle and rework the game's notorious second half? Well, first things first, the Flood also got an SPV3 treatment. Infection forms can now take over hosts on the fly, a la Halo 3. Jackals can now become infected and join the ranks of the Flood. Fleshy biomass grows across the walls and will burst when disturbed, and you will find yourself dealing with newly gestated Flood units. SPV3 also makes an important effort to recognize that the Flood are not strong enough to support a level on their own, so the library now features a healthy mix of Covenant and Flood engagements, as well as plenty of three-way battles between the different factions and yourself. Missions such as Two Betrayals also see a completely new atmosphere to them, which detractors of that level may enjoy. One of my favorite moments during the second half was slowly making my way down a snowy hill with a silenced BR and picking off panicked Covenant in the dark of night like this was some sort of Halo stealth game, only to immediately pick up the new heavy machine gun and begin Ramboing my way through the level. Overall, I'm very impressed with how SPV3 managed to take the game's second half and truly make the game feel strengthened by the new enemy faction, unlike the first game. If we are going to bring up negatives, I guess we can start out with the game's biggest strength, which unfortunately becomes its biggest weakness near the end. The beauty of Combat Evolved is that it never overloaded the player. Every weapon and enemy was where it needed to be. As good as variety is, too much variety can lead to the game buckling under its own weight and ambition, which unfortunately SPV3 nearly does at certain points. As cool as these new additions are, certain weapons feel a bit pointless, such as the DMR, when the carbine serves a very similar role, or the battle rifle's one-shot mode, which again, the carbine already does, but a better version of that. In certain firefights nearing the end of the game, the new additions to the sandbox really began to overwhelm me, rather than enhance my experience. As the game finally began to fire on all cylinders, everything that it had been building to dumped on me, I felt a little bit overwhelmed. Keeping it simple isn't something that SPV3 aimed to do, as its goal was to be Halo CE, but more. And there are certain moments where just maybe more wasn't necessarily better. Fortunately though, the game doesn't ever completely fall apart. It just sort of teeters towards unfiltered chaos nearing the end. SPV3 is an ambitious project
Earth.